Hey, how you doing everybody? This is Gerson Ribeiro and this is my review for the movie Venom The Last Dance. This is a very personal review to me because, as you guys can see, Venom is one of my favorite characters from comics. He's up there with Batman to me. They're my two favorite characters. So with that in mind, I gotta say, this wasn't a bad movie, it was quite enjoyable, but out of the entire trilogy, that's the one I like the least, and I'm going to explain why with the pros and the cons. Beginning with the cons, I think this movie had the same problem as the first one, which is the villains are a bit underwhelming, and they're not everything they could have been. First of all, we got generic villains like the government guy who's after the main character. Like if you've seen E.T. and other movies like this, you know what I'm talking about. There's always a government official or a military officer who's after the alien or the robot and doesn't care if the alien or the robot is a good guy, just wants to hunt him down. The second issue is that this he's supposed to be the main villain of the movie. For those of you that don't know comic books, the main villain of this movie is called No. He's supposed to be the god of the symbiotes because he's the one that created them, like Venom and his entire species. So they see him as a god. But the problem is he was a bit of a tyrannic dictator, so they locked him up in a prison. And now he needs a key to escape. This key is a codex who is embedded in one of the symbiotes. And as fortune will have it, it just happened to be Venom. So now he deployed his alien sentinels all throughout the galaxy to find Venom and the Codex, and they did find him on Earth. The first problem is that, like I said, there's a military guy who's after Venom and is obsessed with capturing. And this military general is played by Chiwetel Ejiofor. Those of you that know superhero movies, you're going to remember he played Mordo in Doctor Strange 1, and a variant of Mordo in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So when I saw the trailers, I thought that this character that Chiwetel was playing was supposed to be like a Mordo variant in the Venom universe, because they already made a point that this universe connects with the main line in the MCU. But no, he's just playing a regular character. So I don't know why would Sony cast him, because we'll just be confused with his casting because he doesn't play Mordo. So we're all confused about it. And he plays a very underwhelming villain. He's just a generic government guy who's obsessed in catching Venom. And Chiwetel Ejiofor is way too good of an actor to just play a guy like that. They could have given him more agency, but they didn't seem to be worried about that. The other huge problem with the villains is that this movie was supposed to have No, the symbiote god, as the villain, but unfortunately, he doesn't do anything. I don't know if it's because he'll be too expensive to animate, but he spends the whole movie sitting on his prison, claiming that he's going to escape, and he kind of sees through the sentinels he sent to Earth, but still, here was God. We're supposed to have this Thanos level villain, but he doesn't do anything. He just sits on a chair all movie. And they got Andy Serkis to play the character, who's one of the best motion capture actors in the world right now. So why would you hire Andy Serkis? I suppose they pay him a huge paycheck to just have him sit on a chair and do 3 or 4 lines. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know if they were just really confident they were going to get a sequel or what, but that definitely didn't work. The final con is that I believe the ending is a bit forced and useless. And I'm going to try not to spoil anything. No, actually scratch that because I can't discuss the ending without spoiling. So here we go. It is established in the movie that Venom has the Codex embedded on his DNA that can free No from his prison. So he already explained to everybody that if he dies, the Codex dies and No is going to spend eternity in prison. So Venom kind of has a bit of a self-sacrifice at the end of the movie to destroy the key, and he seems to die by the end. But it doesn't make any sense because he sacrificed himself and apparently destroys the Codex. But then at the post-credit scene, we see No is free, so somewhat or somehow he got a hold on the codex, and we don't see that at any time. And it seems that Venom died and he protected Eddie before he did, so Eddie survives at the end. Another thing that doesn't make any sense because there was no way Eddie could have survived the final battle because there was an explosion of acid nearby and Eddie totally should have got taken. And then at the end, after like a really, really long post-credit scene, it's heavily implied that a little drop of venom fell on a cockroach and he used that to escape, which kinda would explain how No got the codex anyway, but again, it was a bit sloppy and like it looks like they didn't think very well. It's like they just had a time schedule to fill. And I really hate that Sony did that because I don't know if they were confident they were getting a sequel or what, because Venom is the only character that are somewhat going right, except Spider-Man, because they tried to create a franchise around Morbius and it failed. They tried to create a franchise around Madam Web and it failed. And now they're gonna, at the end of the year, they're gonna come up with the Craven movie, and I'm not sure. Like, I have hope and I have faith, but I think it's gonna fail too because they're just half-assing those movies. You know, they're not thinking straight because the people doesn't want movies centered around villains. You know, like Joker in 2019, it worked, but it was a miracle. And now we had the second Joker this year that was a huge flop, and now we see that it was just a one-off. So that's not working at all. Venom, the only reason Venom was working is because he is a popular anti-hero. And now they create a very sloppy ending that was like, it was open-ended, but it wasn't. So it looks like they weren't thinking, like the script wasn't written at that point. So that was a huge letdown. So now to the pros. As usual, the dynamic between Eddie and Venom is great. You know, the comedy is great with the two of them. Their chemistry is better now, so they don't bicker so much. Some people might consider that a win, others might consider that a loss. I personally consider that a loss because I kind of like the way they bickered in the first two movies. Kind of like those buddy cop movies from the 80s. Yeah, in this one, they're best friends, but still, their dynamic is awesome. That's a huge incentive to watch this movie. Another pro, which I really like, is that you know how I mentioned in the beginning that the villain was a generic, one of the villains actually, was a generic military guy who was obsessed in catching Eddie and Venom? In those movies, they also have the cliche of the mad scientist that is obsessed with the alien because either he wants to exploit the alien's power or do something else. In this movie, we have every indication that the mad scientist, who's played by Juno Temple, is another villain who's going to exploit the symbiotes or something like that, but no. In the middle of the movie, they do a 180 on us, and it turns out that Juno Temple's character was actually a red herring this whole time. Not only she was a good person, but she's the one that helped save the day at the end, because one of the plot points of the movie is that the government knows about the symbiotes. Something that, as usual, they didn't show in the first two movies. But the government knows about the symbiotes, and they have this secret facility which is housing some of them, and the scientist helped the symbiotes escape. And not only she ends up bonding with one of the symbiotes, a lot of other scientists bond with symbiotes, and they become this kind of a squad that helps Venom and Eddie defeat the alien sentinels. So, way to go for the movie for cutting out on the evil mad scientist cliche. The final pro on this movie is that the scientist is kind of a main character, so she's excluded for this point. But the side characters, they work really well because Eddie and Venom, they're on the run and, you know, they have no money, no transport or nothing. So they're just walking down the road and they're picked up by this family of, let's say, modern day hippies that they're on a trip to Area 51 and, you know, they'll just want to see some aliens and stuff like that. We're gonna think that they're just annoying side characters who are just there to fill up time, but they're not. They're actually very endearing. The father's an awesome guy who gives Eddie some solid advice, and he bonds a lot with the guy's little kid, his little son, who's scared of aliens. So Eddie goes up to him and said, oh no, it's okay, some aliens are good, you don't have to be scared. So they kind of act like the heart of this movie. So those side characters were actually really nice. We don't get Annie or or her boyfriend again, which is kind of a letdown because I really liked Annie and Dan on the last movie, so we don't got them back. But we got Mrs. Chen back, and they have an awesome dancing scene, like a three-way dancing between her, Eddie, and Venom, who was really awesome, and it was kind of a funny comedy relief for the movie. So that's pretty much it. The cons are the villains are very bad, and that the ending is a bit crammed, so to speak. Like it looks like it wasn't very well done. And the cons are that, as usual, Eddie and Venom are great. Mrs. Chen and the other supporting characters were great. And the red herring of the mad scientist was really nice when she turned out to be a hero. So overall, I think I'll give this movie a 6 out of 10. A very solid 6 out of 10. So that's it, everybody. That was my review of the movie Venom The Last Dance. So personally, I gotta say, I like the movie, but I'm not going to count the days until I can watch it again, like I did with Deadpool and Wolverine. But that was a really solid movie. It was about an hour 45 minutes, and it was okay. It was one of those movies that it's okay to watch, but you're not gonna be crazy to watch a second time. But I would definitely recommend it, especially if you're a fan of the character. So, see you next time, guys. Until the next day.